welcome to You Beautiful Creation. I'm Tina Jackson, and with me today I have my special guest, Troy Carrigan, who is a master gardener, and she is going to talk to us today about heirloom seeds and the kingdom solutions for this. And Troy, you have so much to or we have so much to glean from you on sharing with us your knowledge on the seeds. So please take it away and tell us all about what we can learn about these heirloom seeds.
Okay, well, thank you, Tina, for having me. As you know, this is a passion of mine, and this is where my gardening journey really started. Before I started gardening, the Lord spoke heirloom to me, and I went, "What is that? I've heard of that." And 3 days later, I was at an expo, and the table right next to me was selling heirloom seed banks. So I went and bought one, and that was my journey. That's how my journey started. I didn't even have a bucket to plant in, but I'd heard the Lord say heirloom, and I knew it meant seeds. So that's why this is one of my favorite classes of all to teach. And it is so important that we understand what heirloom seeds are and why they're important. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So why save seeds? Number one, for food. Those of us that live in Michigan might remember a couple of years ago, in the springtime when it was time for planting, we were not able to buy seeds. And in my case, I really didn't care because I have my own seeds that I have grown, protected, saved. And so I wasn't the least bit affected by that. So that we have food, not just for us and our family, but to feed our community. It's so important that we have the ability to have seeds that we control, that we grow the seeds, we save the seeds, and we distribute the seeds. And it's just critical for us to not only not be subjected to the world system, but for us to bring the kingdom solution to the world. That's the way it's supposed to be. And this is an area, when you start talking about food, you're talking about something really, that's an area where they can control people pretty quickly. So I just highly recommend. I'm just going to briefly touch on this subject here in the time that we have today. Another reason to do it is for the future. Recently, and I say that because it's been in the last 10 or 12 years, the chemical companies have bought the seed companies to the point where there are only about 10% of the seed companies left.
Wow.
And it's really vitally important that we learn this art, and it is more of an art than a science. So for the sake of the future and saving a lot of the old heirloom seed lines, the genetics of those lines, really important that we do that. The next one is for fun and gifts. Seeds are a great gift. If you know someone who is getting a new house, or they're just deciding they're going to get into gardening, seeds are an awesome gift to give someone. And also trade and barter. This may become much more important in the future. And anyone who is paying attention probably already knows that. I'm probably preaching to the choir. So trade and barter, yeah, seeds will be more important than a BMW in the near future. Okay, hybrid versus heirloom versus GMO is not an apples to apples conversation. And you'll see at the right, there's a handout. And thank you, Tina, for making this available to anyone who wants to download it. That is not mine, but it's incredibly informative as far as where do the seeds come from, what is the difference. So your difference basically, I'll do in a nutshell, hybrids are where they take two plants and combine them. But if you save the seed from a hybrid plant, it's not going to produce the same thing that you are looking at. It's going to revert to a parent one way or the other, or something in between. And in the next few pictures, you'll see some of mine. Heirloom seeds are what's called open pollinated, and those are naturally pollinated, and they're the old genetic lines, and they will produce what's called true to type. So they're going to produce the same thing that you planted. It will grow that plant. You can harvest that fruit, plant the seed, and it will grow the same plant. GMO is manipulation of the DNA, and that is a completely different conversation. It's become very political. I'm not going to go into it here, but there's lots of information online. What I recommend is that you just do some research, but not enough that you become crazy over it. That's a good, yeah. Don't get so deep in the weeds on GMOs that you start losing sleep. Just get yourself some heirloom seeds or buy some hybrids, knowing that you're not going to save the seed for the next year, and move on from there. Okay, next slide, please. All right, buying and building your seed bank. In the beginning, my seed bank was that white tube on the right in the top picture. Now my seed bank is two large totes, like a double handle, the stairway totes. But you want to always buy your seeds from a trusted source. You store them properly. And one of the handouts that Tina has graciously made available, that one has some details about which plants to start with that are easy to grow, easy to save seed from, and it will save you a lot of guesswork as far as what to do to get started. So, back to the slide. Okay. And that also has some details on storing the seeds. The one thing that I'll just cover three things that are the enemies of seeds: light, heat, and moisture. Okay. So if you put them in a sealed bag and put them in the basement, you've just taken care of everything. If you don't have a basement, which a lot of people don't, just don't store them on a high shelf. Instead, store them on the floor of a closet. Okay. Where they're going to be kept below 80 degrees, because 80 degrees is kind of a break point where, and they don't explode, they don't disappear, they don't evaporate, they just lose percentage of germination. So you'll have to plant more to get the same thing. But that's the only thing that it does. The third thing, lots of times when I'm doing classes, Tina, I'll have people, I'll ask the question, how many of you have a seed bank? And most of the hands will go up because they bought a seed bank. And then my next question is, how many of you have actually planted some of the seeds? And you see the hands just kind of wilt down to their side. I highly recommend, if you have a seed bank, take some of the seeds out and plant them. They're not going to magically feed you out of that tube. They feed you when you plant them and grow food.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is learn how to harvest, learn to grow the plants, learn how to harvest the food, learn how to use real food. So many people today don't actually cook with whole foods.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what you'll be doing when you grow your own food is
Mm-hmm.
you'll be taking a tomato from the garden and making something to eat with it,
Mm-hmm.
besides just slicing and eating an awesome homegrown tomato.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you need to figure out and learn how to harvest the seeds themselves
Mm-hmm.
because that's a whole different learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
So just put in your mind, I'm going to learn to plant, I'm going to learn to grow, I'm going to learn to harvest and use the food, and I'm going to learn to harvest seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And number 5 is document.
Mm-hmm.
Document everything because
Mm-hmm.
all tomato seeds look alike.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have a package of seed that I'm growing out this year that guess who did not label that particular package of seed right
Mm-hmm.
here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to throw them out and see what happens, but otherwise I would keep them forever and never grow them, but never throw them away because I'll talk about that in a minute.
So there.
So, okay, let's see what happens. This is what happens when you have hybrid seeds that you think are going to grow. The picture on the left is the very first garden that I had.
Looks
Um,
good.
well, yes and no. This will tell you how inexperienced we all were at gardening. My father was the gardener, and he would give us a task. He would say, go weed that part of the garden, and if you don't weed it, you can't get in the pool. That is not enough to feed a family. That is not enough information. It's
Mm-hmm.
not enough to do just that,
Mm-hmm.
to grow food for yourself, for your family, for your community. That garden was the first garden. Dad passed away in February, and his only 2 wishes were take care of mom and take care of his garden. So this is planted in his old weed patch garden. And we were so shocked that we actually grew something that we never harvested anything.
Okay.
I'm telling you, we were such novices. And so this was 2014. So that tells you how
Mhm.
recent it was.
Mhm.
We were just so shocked that we grew anything
Mhm.
that we just left it and we'd walk by and look at it and talk to each other about, isn't it gorgeous? Isn't it gorgeous? And they all died. And we went, I don't think that's what we were supposed to do.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no wonder Dad said he was tired of harvesting for everybody. So that was my first garden, my first experience. But that's why I put harvesting in my teaching now. The
Mm,
one on the right is supposed to be an acorn squash.
mhm.
That came from the big plant that's in the foreground of the picture beside it, which grew, by the way, gorgeous acorn squash.
Mhm.
But that other one is not an acorn squash. It's far from it.
Mhm.
And I've learned since that some of the hybrid crosses can be dangerous to eat. No,
Mm.
I, I've eaten everything that grown that I decided I was going to try, but not very much of that one. So let's go on to the next picture and I'll show you another one. This was a tomato plant that came up from a hybrid seed. It was Dad always had an affinity and a soft spot for what he called the volunteers, the ones that came up on their own.
Mhm.
That's what it looked like when it first came up. And that mess on the right is what it looked like
Wow.
about 6 weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
And the
Wow.
whole thing produced about 5 cherry tomatoes out of that whole mess. It was
Hmm.
just awful.
Yeah.
That's what you get if you want to grow from a hybrid seed that you save.
Okay.
So know when you have heirloom seeds, It's important to keep your hybrids labeled. They grow awesome plants if you're growing the first year from those two parent plants that they put together mechanically. So that's a picture's worth 1,000 words. Don't try to save hybrid seeds.
So it sounds like it's sort of kind of dangerous with this hybrid thing. I mean, isn't that sort of kind of like a GMO? I mean, because I mean, it's genetically modified in a way. I mean, that's what I think of when I think of a hybrid, them altering the original, I don't know.
Tina, that's a really good question. Here's how to look at it. With hybrid seeds, what they do is they take two plants and put them together, maybe for color, for, different characteristics. When you're talking GMOs, you're talking a plant and a fish.
Okay.
Put together. They're not even the same. They're not even in the same kingdom.
Okay. All right.
Well, one's a plant, one's an animal. Yeah. Alive. That's where it stops. Okay. Protecting your seed. These are some things that you can do with. Now, this is taking into consideration that you're starting with heirloom seeds, and this is what you're going to do to have good quality seed at the end of the season to use for the next season. Because plants, bees pollinate. We've all seen bees flitting around pollinating. Bees don't read signs. So when you put up your little sign that says this is a Cherokee purple tomato, and next to it you have a different tomato. Now, tomatoes aren't the best example. Let's use the acorn squash, because there are heirloom acorn squash and heirloom spaghetti squash, and you're growing them near each other, maybe even side by side. The bees don't read the signs that one is one, one's the other. They will literally just split from one to the other. And cross-pollinate all over for you. Now, that cross-pollinated may grow what you saw in the last pictures.
The hybrids.
Yeah, so well, they're not.
They're making hybrids.
they're making you some hybrids. But
all right,
these are some things that you can do to keep your seeds from being cross-pollinated by the bees. Number one, distance. Have them apart. Now, if you read the seed packets on Heirloom Seeds, they'll say by a half a mile or a mile and a half. Corn is just crazy because it's air pollinated. Okay. So it's wind pollinated. It will blow in from 10 fields over.
Wow.
So distance isn't always available. I cannot do my seeds that I grow and sell by distance. I do it by some of these other mechanisms. One is timing, and I'll give you a great example for timing. My garden is surrounded by commercial cornfields. So when I want to grow good quality, non-sprayed sweet corn, I have to use timing. So what I do is I plant them indoors ahead of time, just like they're a tomato or a pepper, which you're going to start early so that you're putting a plant in the ground. And when my corn stalks are about 6 to 12 inches tall, they go in the garden. That's about the time that the farmers in the commercial fields can get into their field with the plow. Because I want mine separated by enough timing that it grows the stalk, it grows the tassel, it grows the silk, and they have the chance to pollinate with themselves instead of having all of that pollen blow in from the commercial fields around me. By the time theirs is up and started with that process of silk and tassel, mine is all done. Thank you. Mine is done, and so it doesn't matter what theirs does. Mine is already creating corn, and theirs won't affect mine. The type of plant makes a difference. Like I said, with the different types of squash, if you if you only grow one type for seed a year, you can let them all cross-pollinate, but only use the seed from one that you're going to protect and hand pollinate. Okay, caging is where you're just going to cover it with some sort of a screen so the bees can't get in it. Caging works for everything except when pollinated, like the corn. You can cage corn all day long and it'll cross-pollinate. That's why you use timing for that. And hand pollinating seems like it's really complicated, but it's not. It's just, especially if you're doing it with something with a big flower like squash or pumpkin, then you're just going to take a male flower. See, hopefully I have that. Okay, if we can have the next slide, please. Now, I taught someone in one of my classes that had been gardening for 50 years and had never heard that there are male and female flowers.
Yeah.
There you go. She was so surprised when I put this slide up and said, the one on the left is a female, the one on the right is a male. You can tell the female because the females always have the babies. Okay. That is a spaghetti squash. Female flower. And that is now the males all look alike, but the females, the squash, even when it's only about an inch long, will look the identical shape of a full-size squash. It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
So all you do to hand pollinate is you wait until they're ready, and then you take the male that's on the right, peel the petals back, and touch it to the center parts of the female plant. There are technical names for all of it, but that's the beginner's hand pollinating 101.
And do you wear gloves, like rubber gloves or something, so your oils don't mess with it?
It won't matter for this because you're never going to touch the center of either of them. And then you do want to tape that female shut with masking tape.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And I recommend blue painter's tape. And the reason for that is you can find it later in the garden. Otherwise, you'll never find which one you did. And then I take a zip tie and put it very loosely around the stem between that flower is going to fall off. So you want it between the fruit, between the squash and the stem itself. Just put it to where it has lots of space to grow into a full-size stem. And that will have pure seed.
Wow.
So you can save that seed at the end of the year and it will create the exact same squash the next year.
Gotcha.
Now, if you turn around and there's a bee in it, you're done. Because that bee has been all over the garden, not reading signs.
So basically, like, I made the biggest mistake of probably putting all my different strawberries next to each other, or raspberries that are different brands, because they're probably getting cross-pollinated and stuff. I probably really messed up. Okay,
you didn't. Here's why. Because those are perennials. And perennials come up from the roots every year, or they send out runners.
Yeah.
And so they're not recreating seed.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yay, so you're safe.
Otherwise, I'm making new raspberries and strawberries.
No, you're good.
Because I gave up on seeds and I went to raspberries and strawberries because I was messing up so bad.
And then you thought you messed up again. No, you did not. Those propagate with runners, so you're all safe.
You're right. Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't mean to take your time. I know you only have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Go ahead.
Okay, let's talk about record keeping because this is critical. Like I said, I have one pack. I'm planting it because I don't know what it is. It did not get this record keeping.
Mm-hmm.
You want the date, which is not the actual date, but you want the date that you pick it, or the date that you take it out of the,
Okay.
out of whatever it is, 2 weeks from that date. So put your starting date, and then 2 weeks later, if you dry all seeds for 2 weeks, you've dried them all enough.
Okay.
Otherwise, small seeds dry quicker. Don't worry about what dries quicker or longer or anything else. If you dry them all for 2 weeks, you're safe. So put today's date and look on a calendar. 2 weeks later is what date? Anytime after that date, you can put it in the package and you're good.
So do you wash it off and then lay them out and put air on it on like a paper towel? Like how do you dry them out, or how do you do that?
I do it on window screen.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And just air dry it for 2 weeks.
Okay.
You'll probably have to kind of stir it a little bit and put some sort of airflow. That was a really good question. Thank you.
All right.
So on your record keeping, you want the type of plant, is it acorn squash? Is it, Tennessee white half runner bean? What is it? And then any special notes, like this came from grandma's old garden plot or whatever. And then the generation number is just how many generations from the same seed have you grown? And I am now on generation 12.
Wow. Fantastic.
No, well, 2013. Yeah, so I will be harvesting generation 12 on cherry tomatoes this year.
Gotcha. That's wonderful.
So that's all I had. Just wanted to share that.
Yes. And you had a book too you recommended too, right? These 2 books, the Whole Seed Catalog and Seed to Seed.
Okay, let me separate the two. The Whole Seed Catalog is one I got from Baker Creek. You'll see that it's old. You do not need to buy that every year. You're just after pictures. Yeah, I'm still using my 2018 one.
Okay.
The one on the right, it's called Seed to Seed, and it's by Suzanne Ashworth.
Okay.
That is a book that when you first get it, you'll open it and go, oh my goodness, this is way too technical. The nice thing is you'll never outgrow it.
Okay.
So it's too technical to start, but you will never outgrow it. So if you only want one book, that's the best one. And if you buy a seed bank, it almost always comes with a harvesting guide. So
awesome. That is fantastic. And down at the bottom of the screen is your contact. If you could say that real quick for those that can't see the screen.
Okay, my website is theveggielady.biz. That's VEGGIE lady.biz. And my email is troycarrigan@gmail.com. It's TROYCARRIGAN@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Troy, for all your information. I know you have one more episode that you're going to bless us with, but for what you did about the heirloom seeds, and you also sell them. So please check out her website. Go to her website and you can even buy some from her and get your garden started today. Thank you again. And don't forget that she does do conferences at churches and libraries and other places. Be sure to contact her. And thank you again, Troy. I'm Tina Jackson.
And I'm Troy Carrigan.
And you are a beautiful creation in Christ Jesus. Thanks for joining us.